إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to the next discussion in our series. This one is called the human heart, the receptacle of Ihsan and light. And following up from where we left off our last series on Ihsan, we're now going to look at the physical effects of Ihsan on the human body. Now, the word there we chose is the word receptacle. And the first meaning of receptacle is a container that is used to put things in. And this heart is a receptacle because what it collects is ihsan and light. Because the Prophet ﷺ says when you do a good deed, the result is light in the heart. And so this heart is designed to contain ihsan, just like a car that works on fuel, on petrol, you can't put diesel in. Similarly, this heart, it needs ihsan and you can't put anything else in. The second meaning of the word receptacle is the enlarged tip of a stem that bears the floral part. That means the part of the stem that connects the flower to the rest of the stem. And without that part, you can't have the flower. So it's the most important part of the stem and the flower, and it's what gives it or allows the beauty to be appreciated. And thirdly, and very importantly, an electrical fitting that is connected to a source of power and equipped to receive an insert. And so we know the heart is an electrical organ, and it's connected to its source of power, which is the soul. Because modern science still can't explain what gives the heart its first spark. It's unknown. And then it's equipped to receive an insert. And what is it equipped to receive? It's equipped to receive ihsan and light. And it's equipped to receive inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And why it's important for us, Allah ta'ala says to us in the Quran, يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ الْمَالُ وَلَا بَنُونَ. On that day, your wealth and your children will not benefit you. إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Except the one that comes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a sound heart. Now just to look quickly at some general information on the human heart and just see the ihsan that Allah infused into the heart when we just look at it as a pump. The average adult heart beats 72 times a minute, 100,000 times a day, 3,600,000 times a year, and 2.5 billion times in a lifetime. It weighs 11 ounces. And it pumps about 2,000 gallons, it's about 7,500 liters of blood through about 100,000 miles of blood vessels each day. That's how long the blood vessels in our body is. And if you were to turn on a kitchen tap for 45 years continuously, that's how much blood your heart filters in a lifetime. And the heart pumps blood to almost every one of the 75 to 100 trillion cells in the body, except the corneas in the eye. And every day the heart creates enough energy to drive a truck 20 miles, which is equivalent in a lifetime to driving to the moon and back. And most important, the heart has its own electrical system. And it can continue beating even when separated from the body. And this is why you can do a heart transplant as long as you have adequate oxygen. Now let's just look at the brief history of the heart. When we look at Western understanding of the heart, the ancient Egyptians and the Chinese, they believed that the heart was the root of life and spirituality. And this is why the Egyptians, when they mummified the bodies, they left the heart in, but they removed the brain. because they felt that the heart was necessary for your onward spiritual journey. Then came along Plato, and he said, no, the most important, or the center of cognition or consciousness, is the brain. And shortly after him came Aristotle, and he said, no, the heart is the central instrument in the body. And in fact, he believed that the heart is connected to all phenomena around us. Then came a Greek guy in the Roman Empire by the name of Galen, and he said that thoughts circulate in the brain and emotions in the vascular system. And in the 17th century came René Descartes, and basically he said that the body was a machine and consciousness was an attribute of the soul. But what he believed was that there was some liquid in the brain which gave the human being his consciousness, and he felt that this liquid was rooted in the pineal gland, which is also very important in yoga. But modern science has discovered that the only thing the pineal gland is responsible, very much responsible for, is the production of melatonin. Then obviously came along Darwin, and he took the idea of the soul out and he introduced the mind-brain theory, meaning that consciousness is something that's lodged in the brain and not in the heart. We just leave the other part of Galileo because that's a bit too long and we don't have time. And the modern understanding is that everything is connected through the language of the heart, that is frequency or energy. And if we look at the Islamic understanding, we have Ibn Sina, who, like Aristotle, believed that the heart plays the central role in thoughts and emotions and supplies blood to the entire body. And then came Imam al-Ghazali, who probably has the most dynamic understanding of the heart. And he said the spiritual heart is connected into the physical heart, and thus your soul or your spirit is connected to every cell in the body. In 1242 came a man, Ibn al-Nafis, who was the grand physician of Cairo, and he described the circulatory system. And this was about 400 years before the man that's credited with it, William Harvey, who only came in 1615. But just to look at our classical scholars, Ibn Taymiyyah said that many doctors and philosophers have said that the mind is in the brain. So we think and understand with our brains and not our hearts. But the center is actually the heart. And Ibn Kathir said that the arrogant philosophers say that the mind is in the brain. So we can see where Islamic understanding is pointing towards. Now when we look at the words for the heart in the Quran, Allah uses the word qalb. And qalb means something that changes often. Taqallub is like boiling water in a kettle, it's turning all the time. And this is the nature of the heart. Another word Allah uses is fu'ad. And fu'ad is usually used for emotion. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَصْبَحَ فُؤَادُ أُمِّ مُوسَى فَارِغًا. And that the heart of Musa, of the mother of Musa, became empty when she had to put her son into the river. And then Allah uses the word sadr. الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ. So these are the words that Allah uses in the Quran. But one of the most profound statements that make us look at the heart is this statement of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says, أَلَا وَإِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُدْغَةً. He says, truly in the body there's a piece of flesh. إِذَا صَلَحَتْ صَلَحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ. If it is sound, then the whole body is sound. وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ. And if it is diseased or corrupted, then the whole body is diseased. أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. So this hadith is forming the basis of our discussion today. And the first thing we are going to look at is that the Quran and Sunnah are cutting-edge science. Something we have to understand is that the Quran is a book that came from the future to guide us from the past back towards the end. Our understanding is that we have something that came 1400 years ago, and we want to discuss whether it's still relevant in the modern times. But what we don't understand, it came from the future. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is independent of space and time. And that these rules are not a set of mundane rules, but rather tuned into the physiology of the human body. And the human being, through his heart, is connected to all humans, the creation at large, and the universe in its entirety. By understanding the wondrous creation of Allah, we can develop a great level of taqwa, ihsan, and appreciation for Allah's favors upon us. Now, in order to understand the role of the heart, we need to understand quickly how the human body functions, or the technology in our body. And the first thing we encounter is the central nervous system, which is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. And this plugs into what we call the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is connected to all the muscles and all the tissues and all the major organs in the body. And this peripheral nervous system is divided into two parts: the somatic system, which is responsible for voluntary movement. So if I move my hands, this is what's controlling it. But the other very important part it's connected into is what is called the autonomous nervous system. And this is what we are interested in. Why? Because this nervous system is automatic. It's something we don't have control over. And this is connected into all the major organs, into the heart and the liver and the kidney and the spleen and the bladder and the gut, everything that our lives depend on. And we don't control it. Now, the body, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this body a system to regulate the autonomous nervous system, and this is divided into two. One is the sympathetic nervous system, and basically this is the emergency mode of the body. If you need to pick up something quickly or swerve out of the way in the car, this is the part of the autonomous nervous system that kicks in. It accelerates the heart rate and gets you excited and gives you the energy that you need. But then it has its calming side, which is called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is designed to bring you back to calmness, or what is called homeostasis, because the body heals itself when it's in homeostasis. Now, if we don't have control over this part of our body, and it's responsible for all these things, then we have a problem with our health and our body, unless we learn to control the factors that will regulate this system. So I'm just going to show you a quick video of something funny and just show you how it affects our nervous system.
But don't make up your mind yet, because we've got more.
Daddy's gonna make you laugh now. Ready?
So basically you see how this affects us. All of a sudden we're all feeling happy and light by just watching something. And this is how our nervous system functions and is affected by phenomena around it. Now the next important thing that plugs into this nervous system of ours is called the enteric nervous system. And this is the gut system. It's made up of the esophagus and the stomach and the spleen and the colon. And why this is important is because modern science has discovered that the gut system contains 100 million neurons, which is what gives your brain the ability to think. And it secretes 90 to 95% of the body's serotonin. Now, serotonin is the hormone of happiness and well-being, and it's all rooted in the stomach. And 90% of the fibers between the stomach and the brain are carrying information from the stomach to the brain rather than from the brain to the stomach. And this is very important because it means this second brain is necessary for our emotional well-being. It produces neurotransmitters which affect the whole body. And what happens in the head affects the system. This is why we have irritable bowel syndrome when we are mentally disturbed or mentally unstable, sorry. I see the women are looking at one of those things because it says in America, 24 to 45 million Americans are affected with irritable bowel syndrome, and 66% are women. The other thing is that the trillions of bacteria in the gut, they communicate with the nervous system, but more importantly, this is another subject we will get to one day, inshallah, is that the gut of the bacteria are responsible for strengthening the immune system. And when we look at, remember, entanglement, things that come from a common source are linked. When we look at the esophagus and the stomach and the colon and the small intestine, they all form from the same embryonic tissue that the nervous system is formed from. And then as they develop, they separate into two different systems, but they remain connected. And this is one of the reasons Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to us in the Quran, Ya ayyuhan nasu kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiban. We should eat what is halal and tayyib. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُ خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. And don't follow in the footsteps of shaitan. إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. Indeed, he is to you an open enemy. And what we should remember, that food is an energy. It has a frequency, and it has the ability to corrupt or to heal the entire system. Now, this is where we need to get to the heart-brain system, which is the most important system in the human body. Now, modern science has discovered that 60 to 65% of the heart cells are actually neuron cells. Okay? And the heart has a magnetic field 5,000 times more powerful than the brain, and an electrical field which is 60 to 100 times stronger than that of the brain. And this allows it to reach via electromagnetism every single cell in the body, and it carries all the information about our emotions and what we're experiencing with it. The nervous system is also of the heart-brain nervous system. It's been found to contain 40,000 neurons. Again, this is what gives the brain its ability to think. And the heart communicates with the brain via the nervous system, via hormones. The heart has now been discovered as a producer and a regulator of hormones in the body. In fact, oxytocin, which we call the hormone of love, has now been found to be emitted from the heart. And when we say, I love you with all my heart, that is a scientifically valid statement. And obviously, it's responsible for the pressure in the arteries and, most importantly, electromagnetic communication. Now, another very important recent discovery is something we call intuition. Just to give you an idea on the power and the importance of the heart in our system.
We did an experiment here at HeartMath to study how the information flows between the heart and the brain. And we actually discovered something quite remarkable, something that surprised us. The participants in the study were connected to various sensors to measure their brain waves, their heartbeats, and so on. And then they were exposed to various images. Some were high arousal, like a car crash or a snake striking, while others were low arousal images, like bunny rabbits in nature scenes. The participants were asked to push a button. They then saw a blank computer screen for 6 seconds. The computer then randomly selected one of these photographs that it displayed for 3 seconds. After that, the screen went blank for 10 seconds. They were prompted to push the button again, and they repeated this protocol about 30 times. When we analyzed all the data, the results were astounding. The heart seemed to know the images before the participants ever saw the images with their eyes. If the future picture was going to be one of the emotionally arousing ones, the heart rate started to drop about 5 seconds before the image was randomly selected to be shown on the screen. So nobody could know what this future picture was going to be. The heart had a much greater deacceleration than if it was going to be a calm picture. These results have since been replicated in many different independent labs around the world, actually. Well, a lot of people say that I don't feel it in my heart, I feel it in the gut. But here's what's really happening. The information comes to the heart first. The heart then sends a different signal to the brain, which we can measure. Then you have a brain response, and then a body response. And with the body response, like the feeling in the gut or the hair on the back of the neck, is where it becomes conscious. But the real flow of information is heart, brain, body. And this is all happening many seconds before the actual event occurs. So what this body of research is telling us is that the heart seems to be connected to a type of intuition that is not bound by the limits of time and space. But what is that source of intuition? What is the heart connected to? And how can we learn to tap into more of that?
So what we first need to understand from this is that thoughts, speech, experience, emotions, and actions are all electromagnetic phenomena. They are means of communication. The next important thing is that the heart is in control, and it's the primary organ of consciousness and information. Most importantly, because it precedes the processing of the brain, it can't be controlled, but rather it controls us. All we can do is influence its functioning by regulating the stimuli we expose it to. And this electromagnetism of the heart connects us to all forms and modes of stimuli, in this case even a computer. So the same will go for your phone. And this is why we know the phones give us stress, all these groups and chats, somebody putting something on, it gets everyone in a panic. When any people talking about a crime, it always excites us and causes panic in our systems. And so disturbing visuals, whether live or recorded, cause stress and health issues. And much research has been done on this, especially on video games, for example, and its effects on children. So what we're learning is whatever we expose ourselves, our eyes and ears to, will affect us. Remember, Ihsan, that we said our thoughts and speech and action should always be good? Because this is what affects the heart. And the last important thing is that the heart has some form of unknown spiritual connection and is receiving information from a source that science cannot detect. And if we go to the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ وَنَعْلَمُ مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ. And indeed we have created man and we know what he whispers to himself. And where does that take place? وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلٍ وَرِيدٍ. And we're closer to him than his own jugular vein. And another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اسْتَجِيبُوا لِلَّهِ وَلِرَسُولِ إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ. It says, oh, you who believe, respond to Allah and His Messenger when they call you to what gives you life. Imagine, look at what other words Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using. This is what gives you life. Following this system, وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَحُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبِهِ. And know that Allah moves between a man and his heart. And where is that place? Do we know where a place is between a man and his heart? This is how close Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to us. So when we look at the heart, we find that the heart emits electromagnetic fields that change according to our emotions. The human's heart's magnetic field can be measured 8 to 10 feet away, and that's what the instrumentation allows. As we're sitting in this room, there are magnetic fields of people around that are affecting us and interacting with us, as we'll see later. And then when you do something positive, the response is something positive through the body, physically positive. And this can boost and affect our immune systems. And the positive emotions increase the way our brain functions, and it helps us to solve problems. In fact, in America, the Heart Math Institute has done some research in underperforming schools where they just taught children to regulate their emotions, and they found a 30 to 40% increase in their mathematical scores. Because what they find is that tasks that require concentration puts us under stress. And if the system goes under stress, it affects the coherency or the flow between the heart and the brain. And then obviously we know that the heart sends more information to the brain than vice versa.
Most people know what it feels like to be in a state of harmony and flow, where our hearts and minds are working together, and there's a genuine connection with others involved. It's easy to love this experience of synergy, but oftentimes this happens by chance, rather than by design or intention. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to produce this flow on demand in our day-to-day communications, projects, and challenges? Research shows that when we shift into a coherent state, the heart and brain operate synergistically, like two systems that mesh into one. We can learn how to activate and sustain the synergy between the heart and brain and prevent stress-producing patterns, along with increasing our mental clarity and discernment capacity. When we do this, our creative solutions for personal, social, and global challenges become more accessible, providing us with more intuitive access and flow. Over the past 20 years, the Institute of Heart Math has produced coherence building techniques that are intentionally simple and based on scientific research. Our mission theme is to simplify a process for intuitive connection to the soul's wisdom and guidance for unfolding who we truly are. New research suggests that our energetic or spiritual heart is an access point for our natural inner technology, the heart's intuitive intelligence, which can elevate our communications, decisions, and choices to a much higher level of effectiveness. One interesting finding from our research is that when people hold genuine core heart feelings such as appreciation or compassion, it naturally increases their heart coherence. We use the term energetics to refer to the systems that we can't see or touch. For example, our thoughts, emotions, and intuitions. The mind and heart feelings are energetic sources that underlie our thoughts and emotions. They're primary drivers of our biological systems and have a powerful influence on our behaviors, choices, and results. The intuitive, energetic heart is what people have associated with their inner voice throughout history. From our perspective, the energetic heart communicates a steady stream of intuitive information to the mind and brain, which in most cases we only use a small percentage of, because our ego choices overrides the intuitive suggestion. Access to our heart's intuition varies among people, yet we all have it. As we learn to slow down our mind and attune to our deeper heart feelings, our natural intuitive connection can occur. Intuition is like energetic gold. Intuitive insights often unfold more understanding of ourselves, others, issues, and life than years of accumulated knowledge. That's why the state of coherence is rapidly gaining interest. In this state, more and more people are reporting increased access to their heart's intuitive guidance, realizing it's within them, and with a little practice, it's easier to access than they thought. Research conducted in our laboratories has confirmed that when an individual is in heart coherence, the heart radiates a more coherent electromagnetic energy field that can benefit people, animals, and the environment. A growing body of scientific evidence suggests that when there is coherent group cooperation, it results in increased flow, effectiveness, and the potential for higher outcomes. It seems as though the group participants are not only in sync, but are communicating on an unseen energetic level. Our personal coherence can benefit our families, co-workers, friends, pets, and more, simply by our presence. From our research, we know that heart coherence is not an idle state. It reaches out, it influences and supports others in many beneficial ways.
So just one important thing to take from that video, which I want us to remember, is that we are always communicating, even when we're not articulating something. But the heart is constantly communicating with everything within us and communicating on a subliminal level with everyone and everything around us. And so the way we walk, our tone, body language, all these things are part of our ways of communicating. But most importantly, this heart that's inside is constantly communicating. And as we've seen in the earlier video, it precedes the processing of the brain. And so it's not possible for us to mask the communication of the heart. And this is why it's important to always keep the heart clean. Because when we look here at the next part, it says that negative emotions can create a nervous system chaos. And I took another video because I found it so important to understand what happens to our body when we allow negative emotions to take a root within us.
Cramming for a test? Trying to get more done than you have time to do? Stress is a feeling we all experience when we are challenged or overwhelmed. But more than just an emotion, stress is a hardwired physical response that travels throughout your entire body. In the short term, stress can be advantageous, but when activated too often or too long, your primitive fight or flight stress response not only changes your brain, but also damages many of the other organs and cells throughout your body. Your adrenal gland releases the stress hormones cortisol, epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine. As these hormones travel through your bloodstream, they easily reach your blood vessels and heart. Adrenaline causes your heart to beat faster and raises your blood pressure, over time causing hypertension. Cortisol can also cause the endothelium, or inner lining of blood vessels, to not function normally. Scientists now know that this is an early step in triggering the process of atherosclerosis, or cholesterol plaque buildup in your arteries. Together, these changes increase your chances of a heart attack or stroke. When your brain senses stress, it activates your autonomic nervous system. Through this network of nerve connections, your big brain communicates stress to your enteric or intestinal nervous system. Besides causing butterflies in your stomach, this brain-gut connection can disturb the natural rhythmic contractions that move food through your gut, leading to irritable bowel syndrome, and can increase your gut's sensitivity to acid, making you more likely to feel heartburn. Via the gut's nervous system, stress can also change the composition and function of your gut bacteria, which may affect your digestive and overall health. Speaking of digestion, does chronic stress affect your waistline? Well, yes. Cortisol can increase your appetite. It tells your body to replenish your energy stores with energy-dense foods and carbs, causing you to crave comfort foods. High levels of cortisol can also cause you to put on those extra calories as visceral or deep belly fat. This type of fat doesn't just make it harder to button your pants. It is an organ that actively releases hormones and immune system chemicals called cytokines that can increase your risk of developing chronic diseases such as heart disease and insulin resistance. Meanwhile, stress hormones affect immune cells in a variety of ways. Initially, they help prepare to fight invaders and heal after injury, but chronic stress can dampen the function of some immune cells, make you more susceptible to infections, and slow the rate you heal.
So we just see the effects of negative emotions on our body. So what have we learned so far? First is that actions that generate positive emotions benefit us physiologically. And this is why we now begin to appreciate the importance of Ihsan. Second of all, that actions that generate negative emotions cause physical harm to our bodies. And we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, In ahsantum, ahsantum li anfusikum. If you behave with ihsan, it's for your own benefit. Wa in asa'tum falaha. And if you behave in a negative way, then it's against yourself. So the consequences of our thoughts, speech, and actions affect us and those around us, and vice versa. And this is why we should be very cautious about who we associate with, and also to self-regulate so that we don't have negative impacts on those around us. Now, just some of the negative states of the heart mentioned in the Quran. Allah uses the word diseased, sealed, hardened, deviated, harsh, veiled, fearful, heedless, blind, empty, locked, divided, covered, and filled with terror. These are the negative ones. And the positive ones, Allah uses joined or united, understanding, love, that Allah moves between a man and his heart, piety, taqwa, gratitude, soft hearts, filled with faith, clean, pure, expanded, like Allah says, Alam nashrah laka sadrak, about the Prophet ﷺ, have we not expanded for you your breast? And this is one thing about our Prophet ﷺ, that what made him the greatest of human beings, Sayyidul Bashar, or the greatest of creation, is that he was the greatest gatherer of hearts. Our Prophet ﷺ told us in this hadith that every prophet had a dua which was accepted by Allah. He said, and every prophet showed haste in this dua, meaning they all used their dua. He said, I have, however, reserved my dua for the intercession of my ummah on Qiyamah. And it will be granted if Allah wills. And in this case, I will use it for every one of my ummah. So our Prophet ﷺ has made space in his heart for every member of his ummah that will come until the end of time. And this is what makes him the man that he was, that he had space in his heart for everyone. And this is the Sunnah. Really, if we say we want to follow the Sunnah, then we should be these people creating space in our hearts for all of creation and strive to gather as many hearts as possible so that we can meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that state. And how will we do this? By making every thought, word and action one of Ihsan. We strive for justice, like Allah says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى, and be good to your relatives. And the things we should stay away from is anger, which we're going to get to in the second lesson on the heart. But just here, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when a man said, give me advice, he said, "La taghdab," don't get angry. And then fear, this is something shaitan threatens us with. And we always in this country fearful of the exchange rate and crime and Zuma doing this, and everything makes us scared, even Donald Trump, And shaitan, he threatens us. Allah says, "Ash-shaytanu ya'idukum al-faqr." Shaitan, he threatens you with poverty. And another thing is anxiety. And this is so important because Allah says in the Quran, "Inna al-insana khulika halu'a," that man has been created in a state of anxiety. This is something that's natural in us. But from Allah's mercy, He gave us the Ihsan to neutralize it. And Ibn Rushd, one of the great scholars of Islam, he said when he looked at life and he looked at the Quran and the Hadith, he found that the only objective of the human being should be to try and avoid anxiety. And then obviously obscenity, what we see, avoid obscenity in what we're looking at, listening to, speaking or engaging in. And the wrong actions and oppression, like Allah says, وَيَنْهَا عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ. And very important, let us avoid disunity. Allah says in the Quran, لَا تَنَازَعُوا. Don't fall into disputation. فَتَفْشَلُوا, or you will lose your courage. وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ, and the wind will depart from your sails. Meaning you will have no power. And this is what Muslims are involved in. Always looking for things to disunite us. Every group has to be broken into smaller groups. Every person has to have a label over him. And what we don't realize, by doing that, we're harming ourselves rather than casting some aspersion on the opposite person. And so look at this beautiful advice of the Prophet ﷺ. He was asked, Ayyun nasi afdalu? Which of humankind is the best? Listen to what he says. Kullu mahmumil qalbi saduqi lisani. And so the Sahaba, they said, the Prophet ﷺ, what he's saying, everyone who is pure of heart and sincere or truthful in speech. So the Sahaba said, Saduqul lisani na'arifu. Sincere or truthful in speech, we understand. Fama mahmumul qalbi. But what is this purity of heart? And listen what the Prophet ﷺ says. He says, Huwa taqiyun naqiyu. It is the pure and pious heart. La ithma fihi. There's no sin in it. Wala baghya. And there's no oppression. Wala ghillan. And there's no malice. Wala hasadan. And there's no jealousy. This is what we should be striving to achieve. And this is one famous one we did in our lesson on Ihsan. Just quickly, Iyyakum wadh-dhann, because suspicion is something negative. And then the Prophet ﷺ says, Wala tahassasu. Don't be inquisitive, negative. Wala tajassasu, and don't spy, negative. Wala tanafasu, don't compete, meaning in dunya, not in akhirah. And this is something that destroys us because we're always creating these competitions, amongst ourselves for no reason. Wala tahasadu, and don't envy. As soon as you look at someone else, say, who does this guy think he is? This is what Shaitan did when he saw Adam. And this is what he wants to put into our hearts, to always look at somebody different and say, who's this guy? Where did he come from? Wala tabaghadu, and don't hate one another. Wala tadabaru, and don't be hostile or turn away from one another. Wakunu ibadallahi ikhwana, but be brothers in Islam. And in another version of this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, At-taqwa hahuna, that piety is here. It's not in your clothing. It's not in what you claim to follow, or the house you live in, or the car you drive. It's inside the heart. And this is the important thing here. We've done so many times before that the real strength of a human being is in the rhythm of his heart. If you see on the right-hand side there, that's a coherent heartbeat. And one of the things of coherence, if we can develop this strong heart, nothing will be able to affect us. Shaitan, he threatens us with black magic, with poverty, with all these things. But if our hearts are coherent, nothing will be able to affect us. And all the things we've been given, whether it's the reciting of the calls or the ayatul kursi, those are all means, those are all access points of energy which strengthen our own energy system. And all negative emotions is what drains us of our strength and internal energy. So this is a long thing, just if you want to go into the notes and read yourself. But basically, incoherence is something that's going to deplete our energy. It's going to harm us and the ones around us. And coherence is something that's going to increase our energy, affect us positively and those around us. So what is this coherence and how will it affect those around us? Let's just look at that quickly.
Let's talk about social coherence. Here's you. Who are you right now? What are you thinking? How's your attitude? What are you feeling? Your emotions. Look around. Your thoughts, attitude, and emotions, they're not just here. They're also out there in an energetic field. We all radiate an electromagnetic field. It's been measured. Heart math calls this the energetic field environment. We know people next to you are affected by your thoughts, feelings, and attitudes, and theirs affect you too. We're all connected in the energetic field. What are you feeding the field environment? Negative energy or uplifting energy? Our scientists are exploring how we're all interconnected in the energetic field environment. In one independent study, 4 people sat around a card table. 3 of them were trained in a heart math coherence technique. Their heart coherence was measured before and during the experiments. What's coherence, you ask? Personal coherence is when your heart, mind, emotions, and physical systems are operating in sync and resonating in cooperative alignment. So 3 of the 4 people at the table shifted into coherence using our heart lock-in technique while the 4th person sat quietly. What do you think happened? You guessed right. The 4th person's heart coherence level went up too, just from being in that uplifting energetic field. That's the power of interconnection. This experiment was actually done 10 times involving 40 people. They got the same results and the uplifting effects were confirmed. A research study at several universities was done with people standing at the bottom of a hill, wearing backpacks. Turns out that when more weight was added to the backpacks, the people thought the hill was steeper. Even more amazing, the experiment revealed that the hill didn't seem as steep when friends stood next to each other. The closer their friendship was, the less steep they thought the hill was. The quality of our relationships affect how we perceive the world. Friends lighten our load. Social coherence is a stable, harmonious alignment of relationships that enables an efficient flow of energy and communication. Researchers say that the most successful groups and organizations operate more coherently in that positive energetic state.
So what we should take from this is that we should learn to control our zones with positive thoughts, speech, and actions. And this is our homes, the husband or the wife, basically controls whether that home becomes a sphere of positivity or negativity. Work, your business, you can decide whether your business is something negative or positive. Your family unit, you can decide positive or negative. Your interaction with your staff, your colleagues if you are professional, your students if you are a teacher, and your community and the ummah in general. We need to become conscious of these kind of effects that we can have on people around us, because our hearts and brains have the ability to synchronize. This is also part of number 2, but this is just one of the things that they find, like a mother's brainwave can synchronize to a baby's heartbeat. But it's not only confined to this relationship. The other important thing is that the heart has a system of long and short-term memory. In fact, in extensive studies where they follow up people that have had heart transplants, they find suddenly that the recipients of hearts start having character changes, preference for food, activity, and when they investigate, they find that the person who donated the heart had those characteristics. So that physical heart, it's taken out from this person and putting there, but the muscle itself is carrying memory in it. So this is something, it's like a natural policeman that Abba has put in us. It's something that we can't cheat. It's impossible. It's like a safety mechanism that's designed to keep us in check. And so what we learn is that happiness is not out there. It's something that is inside of us. And this is the Surgeon General, the current Surgeon General of the United States. And let's just hear quickly what he's got to say about happiness.
What is so striking about these tools for increasing happiness, meditation, gratitude, social connection, and exercise, is that they are simple and accessible. We have become accustomed to thinking that complex problems require complex solutions. But that's not always the case. Sometimes simple solutions can enable us to take on some of our most intractable problems. That's what happiness can do when it comes to health. If you think about it, all of us have the power to create happiness in our lives. But we also have the power to help create happiness in the lives of others. Each of us has the power to touch other people's lives, sometimes with just a simple gesture or a kind word. Imagine if happiness and emotional well-being were prioritized in our schools as much as test scores and grades. Imagine if cultivating happiness was a priority in our workplaces. Imagine if our policymakers understood emotional well-being to be the fuel that enables us to be healthy, productive, and strong. So as we grapple with the challenges of how to create a healthier, stronger world, let us remember that happiness is a powerful tool for health. Let us remember that we can create happiness in our lives and in the lives of people around us. Let us call ourselves and each other to action to ensure that emotional well-being is part of our policies, part of our institutions, and part of our way of life. If we do this, we will create a world that is full of joy, a world that is full of health, the world our children deserve. Thank you very much.
So he's talking of emotional well-being, and we're going to visit a concept called emotional intelligence. And what modern research has discovered is that IQ is no longer a factor for success. It's outdated. People with average IQs outperform those with higher IQ 70% of the time. And 90% of successful people have high emotional intelligence. And the difference between EQ and IQ is that EQ can be learned and developed, and your IQ is fixed whether you're 15 or 50. Now, what is emotional intelligence? If we look at emotional intelligence theory, we basically say it's the ability to be aware of yourself, meaning be aware of your thoughts, your speech, and your action, and then manage your thoughts, your speech, and your action. And then be socially aware. You must be able to empathize with people around you and identify with their feelings, and then manage your relationship with them in a positive way. And this is what they're calling emotional intelligence. And if we just look at the Prophet ﷺ, he says in the hadith, he says, Al-Kayyisu man dana nafsahu, that the intelligent man is the one that can control himself. وَعَمِلَ لِمَا بَعْدَ الْمَوْتِ. But more importantly, he does those kind of actions which benefit him after he leaves the world. And what we're understanding is that good action in this world, behaving well with others, is what benefits us in the next life. And then he says, وَالْعَاجِزُ, and the fool, مَنْ أَتْبَعَ نَفْسَهُ هَوَاهُ, is the one who follows whatever he wants to do, meaning he's got no self-regulation. وَتَمَنَّ عَلَى اللَّهِ, and then he says, I put my trust in Allah. So really, if we think we are religious people and we have some kind of religious levels, accomplish some form of religious levels, and we don't know how to regulate our thoughts, our speech, and our actions, and we don't know how to regulate our interaction with other people, then that spiritual level means nothing, as we discovered or discussed in our lessons on Ihsan. Now, one important thing we have to learn to become aware of is just our heart rhythm. when you start feeling you're getting excited and you feel the heart starting to increase, we all must just become aware of that and start to calm ourselves down. When we look at the Heart Math Institute, all their techniques are focusing on breathing and thinking of appreciation. But we can just think of breathing and say, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Wa inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Qaddarallahu ma sha'a fa'ala. And just start to calm ourselves down, and you will see the benefit of following this treatment. And so what we're learning, that in addition to emotional intelligence, because that emotional intelligence theory is something that's designed in most cases for business. But if we want to still take it a level further, we need, in addition to emotional intelligence, we need heart intelligence. Meaning we have to be able to manage ourselves and our relationships with others in such a manner that the heart and the body remains in a state of coherence. And if we just look quickly now, I try to summarize the Heart Math Institute, their findings. They're saying that the ability to control one's emotions and the responses to various situations we find ourselves in is essential for our well-being. And that a person's energy is depleted or enhanced depending on their response to stimuli. And they're saying that to learn to regulate the self is necessary for maintaining our energy, relationships, physical and psychological well-being. I got the inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This is something that helps us to self-regulate. But let's see what they're saying, that they are trying to discover techniques that will effectively enable them to maintain their composure. It's like a trial and error thing. And the inability of the individual to self-regulate is responsible for almost all the problems plaguing human societies. And so the single most important skill that the majority of people need is the ability to self-regulate and learn to behave positively in every situation. And if we want to summarize that, we'll summarize it in one word, which is Ihsan. The most important thing that every human being needs to learn is Ihsan. And so when we look at emotional intelligence and heart intelligence, will that be enough? Let's look at the Quran. Allah says, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُهُمْ بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. That those who believe and whose hearts find rest in the remembrance of Allah, أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. It is only in the remembrance of Allah that hearts find rest. Now what this means, not just you sit with your tasbih. It means we remember Allah. That's important. Meditation, as we heard that Surgeon General saying, is important. But it means we remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at every instant. When you're angry, when somebody cuts you in the road, like my brother told me someone did to him yesterday, or when your maid burns your garment, or somebody spills something on you. Those are the times we have to find, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and these are the things that will keep, these responses are what will keep the hearts calm. And look at the Prophet ﷺ. Look at this hadith, says, قَالَ كَانَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ يُكْثِرُ أَن يَقُولُ. He often used to say, يَا مُقَلِّبَ الْقُلُوبِ ثَبِّتْ قَلْبِي عَلَى دِينِكَ. O turn of hearts, make my heart firm on your deen. And so a Sahabi said, Ya Rasulullah, آمَنَّا بِكَ وَبِمَا جِئْتَ بِهِ. We believed in you and what you came with. فَهَلْ تَخَافُ عَلَيْنَا. Are you fearing for us? قال نعم. He said, yes, I fear for you. إِنَّ الْقُلُوبَ بَيْنَ أَصْبُعَيْنِ مِنْ أَصَابِعِ اللَّهِ. Because the hearts are between the fingers of Allah, يُقَلِّبُهَا كَيْفَ يَشَاءُ. That means if you're not aware of your heart, Allah can turn it. It causes it to go into deviance. And look at this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says that my heart is invaded by unmindfulness. And I ask Allah's pardon 100 times in the day. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ's unmindfulness is still connection to Allah. So imagine our unmindfulness. And another hadith, he says, the lightness of the heart is that of a feather blown about by the wind in the desert. This is how easy it is for our hearts to turn and why we should be so careful. And so what we come to realize is that the next thing we need, in addition to emotional intelligence, in addition to heart intelligence, is something called spiritual intelligence. We need a system that will help us to regulate our personal action, our relationships with others, and prescribe those forms of meditation or worship that will bring coherence to our physical and spiritual well-being. Because these two things are mutually inclusive. If you want to be healthy, you have to have a spiritual regime. And if you have spirituality, you will have physical health. Obviously, it must be with ihsan, meaning with sincerity and taqwa. So what man in the world needs is a way of life that ties into the physiology of the human being, his soul, and the entire creation that he's connected to around him. Because this will bring health, happiness, and success to man and balance the universe. So how much will we be willing to pay for this? But wait, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this for free. Moreover, when we do it, He pays us double and multiplied. When we err, He becomes displeased because like a father, He only desires what's good for us. If we repent, He erases our evils. Have we realized that this deen is not a set of tasks, of do's and don'ts, but rather a gift that is indispensable for health, success, happiness, and well-being in this world? But there's more. If you do what's good for you in this world, you get the benefit of eternity, eternal happiness and joy. This is the deal that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is offering us. And this is why He said to us, Al-yawmu akmaltu lakum dinakum. This day I have perfected your way of life for you. Wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati. Listen to the words. And I have completed my favor upon you. This deen is a favor. وَرَضِيتُ لَكُمُ الْإِسْلَامَ دِينًا. And I have chosen Islam as your religion. And Allah clarifies. He says, مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. Allah does not desire to place us in difficulty. وَلَكِنْ يُرِيدُ لِيُطَهِّرَكُمْ. But He wants to purify us. And وَلِيُتِمَّ نِعْمَتَهُ عَلَيْكُمْ. And He wants to complete His favors upon us. Why? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. This is the disposition that Allah wants between Him and His servant. Gratitude, that we realize this favor and we appreciate it. And Allah says that when the people get to Jannah, this is what they're going to say. Alhamdulillah alladhi hadana li hadha. All praise is due to Allah who guided us to this. وَمَا كُنَّا لِنَهْتَدِيَ لَوْلَا أَنْ هَدَانَ اللَّهُ. We could never have been guided. We could never have this complete emotional or happiness if Allah had not guided us to it. And so how did Allah favor us? لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. He sent us this lesson of Ihsan. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And He sent Him as a mercy to all of us. This is the message. This is the Quran and the Sunnah. A mercy and a favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to humankind, because this is what they need, physically and spiritually. And Allah confirms that in the Quran where He says, وَيُحِلُّ لَهُمُ الطَّيِّبَاتِ. He has made halal, He has legislated for us only what's good for us. Anything that Allah has told us to do is good for us. وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِثِ. And what He has made haram is harmful for us. So whether we're talking of interest or any kind of illegal things that we eat or partake in, it's all harmful for us. So I want to just look quickly now. Is what I'm saying correct? If I say to you that taqwa, this is the verse we read every time we start our lessons, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatihi. Oh, you will believe, fear Allah, or have this taqwa, have this awe of Allah as He should be respected. وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. But if what I'm saying is correct, that means having taqwa should be physically healthy for us. So let's test this hypothesis.
So in an additional study, we had participants fill out a survey that was designed to measure the frequency and intensity with which people experience 7 specific positive emotions: amusement, awe, contentment, compassion, pride, love, and joy. Not only did we replicate our original findings that positive emotions predicted lower levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines, we also found that 4 specific positive emotions were particularly good predictors of lower levels of IL-6. Those emotions were joy, pride, contentment, and awe, and their predictive value was significant. Interestingly, the emotion of awe had the strongest negative relationship to levels of IL-6, even when we controlled for the other 6 positive emotions, even when we took the relevant personality measures into account, and even when we used another measure that asked participants how much awe, wonder, and amazement they felt the day they came into the lab. So let's talk a little bit about awe. Awe is a powerful and transformative emotion. It's inspired great works of art, incited religious movements, and generated philosophical musings about the sublime. But despite this impressive resume, only very recently have we begun to study this emotion in psychology. So what is awe? I define it by its synonyms, wonder and amazement, and by its psychological experience. We feel awe when we encounter something vast and grand that challenges our worldview. It makes us feel small in the presence of something bigger than ourselves and connected with others around us. Now, you might be thinking that you have to travel to remote places in order to experience this emotion, but I can tell you that that's not the case. In fact, participants report feeling awe about twice a week on average, making it a more common emotion than you might expect. We feel awe when we hear beautiful music, when we look up at the night sky and see the stars, or when we watch athletes achieve feats that we thought were beyond reality. So here's the question. Why would awe be a better predictor of good health than other positive emotions? We don't yet know. What I do know is that these findings have changed how I think about awe in my own life. I used to see a walk in nature or a trip to the museum as a luxury that I could rarely afford in my busy life. Now I see these experiences as essential to my mental and physical health. And as a field, we psychologists are changing how we think about positive emotions. We now recognize that they aren't simply the absence of negative emotions, but that they're colorful and varied in their own right, and that specific positive emotions like awe might hold important benefits for things like physical health. Now, we still have a lot to learn about the emotion of awe, but it's fascinating to think that in seeking out the beauty and the mystery and the vastness that our world has to offer, that we might actually find the key to our own physical health. Thank you.
So imagine she's saying people may experience awe twice a week. If we say Allahu Akbar, and then with conviction, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Every single praise is due to the Lord and owner of everything. That's already awe. And we're doing that minimum 5 times a day. And they're talking of twice a week. And we say, Subhanallah, this is why we should have conviction in our ibadah. You take the tasbih and you Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. What are you doing? We need to be connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why we have to learn to understand the Quran, because when you just start listening to that book, you're already feeling the awe of our Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then she mentioned pride, which is actually ihsan, when you take pride in doing something. And then contentment, compassion, and love, and these are all parts of ihsan, and it has physical effects on the body. So, if we're looking for happiness, what do we need? We need emotional intelligence. We need heart intelligence regarding the way we regulate ourselves and people around us. But what we've now learned that in addition to that, we need spiritual intelligence, which is awareness of our Creator and to manage our relationship with Him. Now let's just look at this diagram. If we look at the blue, we would say we have to be at peace with our Creator. And we look at the red blocks and we have to be at peace with ourselves. And if we look at the green blocks, we have to be at peace with our fellow man. And isn't that the definition of Islam? Peace with Allah, peace with yourself, and peace with your fellow man. And let's just look at the beautiful surah. Allah says, Wal Asri. As time passes, Innal insana lafi khusr. Indeed, man is in a loss. Illa alladhina amanu. Look at the top blocks. Except those who have a relationship with Allah. Wa amilu salihat. And then they do those actions which benefit them. And lastly, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And they're working with others. You see, social engagement with others towards truth and towards patience. So we learn that Allah is the source of power, praise, ihsan and mercy. That Islam is the consequence of Allah's ihsan and mercy, and not merely a set of religious do's and don'ts. Today we had a good lecture and the Imam said that every people have an etiquette and we have our etiquette prescribed by Allah and the Prophet ﷺ, and this is why we should follow it, and that's where he stopped. But what we have to understand that this is not just merely that. This is tied into the physiology and is necessary for the happiness, the health and success of every human being. Because the heart is the receptacle that connects us to Allah and attracts His ihsan and mercy and earns either light or darkness. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Inna Allah la yanzuru ila atsamikum. Allah doesn't look to our bodies. Wala ila suwarikum. Or to our outer forms. Walaki yanzuru ila qulubikum. But He looks to your hearts, and this is what He pointed to. So any external things we gather are not important. Another one, just to clarify, the Prophet ﷺ says, Inna Allah la yanzuru ila suwarikum wa amwalikum. Allah doesn't look to your outer forms or your wealth. وَلَكِنْ يَنْظُرُ إِلَىٰ قُلُوبِكُمْ وَأَعْمَالِكُمْ. But He looks to your hearts and your deeds. This is just one advice for the brothers. That the Prophet ﷺ says, people should desist from failing to attend Jamaat. This means getting to the masjid. Otherwise Allah will seal their hearts and they will be amongst the negligent. Very important. And the ladies, I know you're feeling left out, but in part 2 you're going to see that there's really scientific explanations for these things. And so let's end with Rumi's quote. Rumi says, yesterday I was clever, so I decided to change the world. Meaning, yesterday I was clever and I found a problem with everybody else. Everybody had the problem and they all needed to change. Today I'm wise and I decided to change myself. And finally, Aristotle, he says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence or ihsan then is not an act but a habit. وما علينا البلاغ سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم نشهد ولا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.